The morning he decided to leave his wife and their sick little girl, Ryan Hayes thought the most important thing happening in his life was a wedding ring he hadn't even bought yet. His phone buzzed nonstop on the kitchen counter, screen lighting up with sweet messages from another woman, while his wife stood by the sink holding a stack of hospital bills that looked heavier than bricks. Sunlight poured through the big glass window, turning their polished floor into a mirror that showed everything he was walking away from and everything he thought he was walking toward. On the table beside his half-finished coffee lay a printed email he hadn't bothered to read, the subject line bold and official-looking from a government account that most people would have opened first. Ryan didn't. He was too busy checking if his new suit looked right for his new life. At the far end of the kitchen, Meg and Hayes held their daughter close, one hand pressed against Lily's warm forehead, the other gripping those medical papers so tightly her knuckles turned white. Lily was 7 but looked smaller, her head bare under a soft pink beanie, her skin pale in her oversized sweatshirt. Her eyes followed her father as he rolled 2 gray suitcases toward the door, the wheels making a dull rattling sound that cut through the quiet like a warning bell. Megan's heart pounded in her chest so loudly she could almost hear it, but her voice came out soft. "Ryan, you're really doing this today?" she asked. He did not answer right away. He slipped his phone into his blazer pocket, adjusted his cufflinks, and checked his reflection in the stainless steel fridge like he was getting ready for a job interview instead of walking out on his family. The only thing he glanced at with the same care as his own face was the time on his watch. He had a meeting. He had a future, so he told himself. Before we go deeper into this story, pause for a second. Hit that subscribe button to support this channel, turn on notifications, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now. Your support helps us share more life-changing stories like this. Ryan finally turned toward Megan, his expression tight like he was the one being forced into something unfair. "We've talked about this," he said. I need stability, Meg. I can't keep living like this. There's no money, there's no plan, it's just hospital visits and your crazy bids that never go anywhere." Megan swallowed hard. She didn't tell him that just a few hours earlier at 6:42 a.m. her email notification had pinged while she held Lily during another night of fever and nausea. She hadn't dared to open the message with the government logo right then. She had only seen the first line on the lock screen, "We are pleased to inform you." Her heart had jumped, but Lily had thrown up seconds later and Megan had tossed her phone aside, focusing on wiping her daughter's mouth and whispering comfort. The unread email now sat printed on the table because she'd meant to go back to it after getting Lily to rest. She hadn't reached that moment yet. "You call it crazy," Megan said quietly, "but this project is the biggest one I've ever chased, if we win this contract." "If, Meg," he cut in, "always if. I can't keep betting my life on your dreams." Lily's small voice broke the space between them. "Daddy," she whispered, fingers twisting in the hem of Megan's t-shirt, "are you coming to my next treatment?" Ryan's jaw tightened. For a brief second his eyes softened as he looked at his daughter, her thin arms, her tired smile that still tried to be brave. Something inside him wavered, but then he thought about the office he'd been shown last week at Ward Group, bright windows, leather chairs, a title with the word Vice President on the door. He thought about Chloe Ward, smiling at him like he was already part of her world, promising introductions, power, comfort, a life where money would never be a problem again. I'll see what I can do," he said, which meant no. Megan heard it, Lily felt it, the words dropped to the floor like cold stones. To understand how they got here, you have to step back a few years before hospital rooms and broken wedding vows, back to a cramped garage that smelled like dust and coffee. Megan had once taped blueprints to those concrete walls, her hair in a messy bun, her hands dotted with ink and highlighter marks. While other people scrolled on their phones, she'd stayed up till 2 or 3 a.m., drinking cheap coffee and sketching bridge concepts, road layouts, and water systems for cities she only visited in dreams. That was how Hayes Engineering Solutions had started, just a laptop on a folding table and a worn-out woman who believed she could design better roads than the ones that kept flooding every rainy season. Back then, Ryan had admired her fire. He had come home from his office job, loosened his tie, and watched her talk excitedly about storm drains and load capacity, words he didn't fully understand but liked hearing because they made her eyes glow. He told her she was brilliant. He told his friends his wife would be famous one day. He also told her, "Don't forget who gave you those first contacts," reminding her that it was his networking at company dinners that brought her early clients. Megan never denied it. She always said, "We're a team." When Lily was born, everything shifted, but in the best way. For a while, there were balloons and baby clothes and pictures on the wall. Megan slowed down just a little, scheduling her site visits around feeding times and naps. Ryan held their tiny daughter in his arms and promised he would do anything for her. He meant it then. The first nosebleed came when Lily was 4. It had been a Saturday morning, cartoons humming in the background, the smell of pancakes in the air. At first they thought it was nothing, a dry nose, a simple thing. Then came the bruises that appeared out of nowhere, the strange tiredness, the way she would fall asleep halfway through a game. The diagnosis at the hospital hit them like a crash, a serious blood cancer. Treatment would take months, maybe years. There would be hospital stays, medicine with long names, side effects nobody wanted to name. Megan's world shrank to waiting rooms and test results. She took calls from clients in hallways smelling like antiseptic, sent design files from plastic chairs beside Lily's bed, worked on her laptop under harsh fluorescent lights while machines beeped around her. Ryan tried at first. He sat with them, held Lily's hand, posted pictures of himself as a strong dad with hashtags about fighting. But slowly his patience thinned as their savings drained. Insurance covered some things, not all. There were special drugs, extra scans, bills that arrived in colorful envelopes but all carried the same message: pay now. Megan worked harder. The small roads and drainage projects that had once excited her no longer paid enough. She started chasing bigger jobs, city flyovers, housing estates, public works. Her name began to appear on shortlists beside firms older and richer than hers. But big contracts required time, meetings, presentations, careful numbers. Some she lost by a narrow margin. Each "thank you for applying, unfortunately" email felt like a punch. Ryan felt each one too, but in a different way. "You're never here," he would say. "You're either at the hospital or at some meeting. When are we supposed to matter?" Megan would stare at him, exhausted, and answer, "I'm doing this because of us, because of Lily, we need the money." Ryan saw something else. He saw her firm's name on proposals, her being called lead engineer while he stayed in mid-level management at his company, waiting for a promotion that never seemed to come. He saw her getting invited to speak at a conference once, standing at a podium while people clapped for her ideas about safer bridges. He clapped too, but inside, jealousy stirred, quiet and poisonous. Then came Ward Group. Ward Group was one of the largest construction conglomerates in the country. They could buy and sell smaller firms like toys. Megan had dreamed of partnering with them, but they had never taken her calls. Ironically, it was Ryan's company that worked with them first. At a corporate event, Ryan met Chloe Ward, the polished daughter of the company's powerful chairman. She was everything he thought success looked like: perfect hair, neat blazer, a smile that said she was used to doors opening before she even knocked. At first, she treated him like just another manager from a mid-tier firm. But Ryan tried his best jokes, told his best stories, exaggerated his role just a little. When Chloe found out his wife was an engineer running her own company, her eyebrows lifted. "Interesting," she had said, swirling her drink. She gave him her business card and asked him to send some of Megan's portfolio. Megan had been thrilled. "This could be it, Ryan. If we impress them, maybe we finally land something big." She spent days polishing presentation slides, fixing every small detail. Ryan forwarded the email, adding a note that made it sound like he was the one leading the partnership. Meetings were scheduled. They presented. Ward Group listened, nodded, took notes, and then sent back silence for weeks, or so Megan thought. During those weeks, Chloe and Ryan started talking more. It began with simple updates, then jokes, then late-night chats, then video calls when he said he had to work late. Slowly, the line between friendly and something else blurred. Chloe complained about rich guys who took her money for granted. Ryan complained about a wife who, in his words, only cared about contracts and cancer treatments. He didn't mention how her hands shook when she opened medical letters. He didn't mention how she slept in hospital chairs. One rainy afternoon, while Megan was at the hospital signing consent forms, Ryan sat in a quiet cafe with Chloe. Drops of water slid down the window while Chloe leaned closer and said, "You're smart, Ryan. You shouldn't be stuck where you are. My dad thinks you're wasted in that position." He laughed nervously. "Your dad doesn't even know me." She stirred her coffee slowly. "He knows more than you think. He likes loyal people, people who aren't distracted, people without messy situations at home." Her eyes lingered on him in a way that made the message clear. "If you were free, there's a role coming up, strong pay, stock options, and if things go well between us," she smiled lightly, "you wouldn't have to worry about hospital bills ever again." The words sank into Ryan like warm honey over a sore throat. Free, strong pay, no more bills, no more arguments over money, no more watching his wife chase dreams that didn't pay fast enough. That night, when he came home, Megan was sitting on the couch with Lily's latest test results. Her face was pale, but there was a small spark in her eyes. "Good news," she said. "The doctor thinks if we keep going with this treatment plan, there's a strong chance." "We can't keep going," Ryan cut in, his voice sharp. "We don't have the money, Meg." She blinked. I'm working on something big. I've been shortlisted for this new national project. If we win it, it'll cover everything and more. I've never been this close before." "You always say that," he snapped. "Always, almost, always, maybe. Meanwhile, I'm drowning. Do you know how it feels to be the man of the house and still feel like a failure every time the bills come in?" Megan wanted to say, "I know how it feels to be the mother who has to hold our child while they stick needles in her arms," but she swallowed it. Fighting would not help Lily. Instead, she showed him a draft of the proposal she was working on, a massive infrastructure contract to rebuild major highways and bridges in 3 regions. It was worth a staggering amount. She had already passed the first stages. The government had praised her designs. "This is real, Ryan," she insisted. "They asked for updated documents last week. That means they're still interested. They said they'd decide soon." But soon was not a date he could hold in his hands. Chloe's offer was. 2 weeks later, Ryan met with Mr. Ward himself in a glass-walled office high above the city. The older man looked him over like a product he might buy. "My daughter speaks highly of you," he said, "but we do not mix business with chaos, you understand me?" Ryan nodded, his throat dry. "I understand. One wife, one sick child, one unstable small firm that might or might not land a project." Mr. Ward tapped a pen against the table. "If you want to move up in our world, you need a clean slate, no distractions. Chloe needs a partner who is fully available personally and professionally." That was the conversation that planted the final seed. Ryan walked out of the building feeling both guilty and proud. By the time he reached the parking lot, he'd half convinced himself that leaving Megan was not cruelty but logic. She would be better off without him dragging her down, he thought. She had her company, she had her projects, she was strong, she would manage. Lily, he didn't let himself think too deeply about Lily. The night before he left, Megan stayed up late at the dining table, tweaking the last details of her big bid. Charts, maps, and cost estimates covered the table. Lily, wrapped in a blanket, slept on the couch nearby, tired from another round of treatment. At midnight, Megan's laptop chimed, an email from the Federal Infrastructure Agency. Her heart thudded. "We appreciate your submission," she read out loud in a whisper. For a terrifying second, she thought it was another rejection, but the words that followed were different this time. They were inviting her firm as a finalist. They wanted updated financial documents and a confirmation she could handle the project scale if awarded. It was the closest she had ever come to something that big. She turned toward the hallway, wanting to wake Ryan to share this tiny victory, but she stopped. He had been distant for weeks, sleeping with his back to her, secretive with his phone always busy. She thought he was still just angry and tired. She did not know that downstairs in his messages, Chloe had already sent him a picture of a diamond ring she liked just for fun. In the morning, Ryan woke up before dawn. He showered, dressed in his best navy suit, and quietly carried his bags to the door. Megan was in the kitchen, trying to swallow coffee that tasted like fear. Lily sat at the table, pushing cereal around her bowl. Megan finally gathered the courage to speak as he came back for his last suitcase. "Ryan, wait," she said. "Before you decide anything, at least read this." She picked up the printed letter she'd received after sending in the final updated documents. It had arrived early that morning. She hadn't fully processed it yet, her brain still tired from lack of sleep. She had only seen enough to know it was very, very important. The letter was addressed to Hayes Engineering Solutions lead engineer, Megan Hayes. It spoke of evaluations, funding, timelines for something huge. She held it out to him with a shaky hand. I think we might have actually done it," she said. "Just read it, please, before you walk out." Ryan didn't even glance down. "I don't have time for more almost news, Meg," he said coldly. "I've made my decision. I filed the papers yesterday." Megan froze. "What papers?" He sighed as if she was the difficult one. "Divorce papers. It will be final soon. I can't keep living in this chaos." "Chloe," he stopped himself, but it was too late. Megan's eyes widened. "Chloe," she repeated, voice cracking. "So there is someone else." He rubbed his forehead, frustration spilling out. "Look, you'll be fine. You're the genius, remember? I'm the one stuck. Chloe and her family can give me a stable future. They can get me into a position where I can actually breathe. I've signed away my rights. You'll have full custody. It's better this way." Lily slid off her chair, her legs shaky but determined. She walked over and grabbed his sleeve with both tiny hands. "Daddy, don't go," she whispered. "I'll be good. I'll get better, I promise." For a moment, the tough mask on his face cracked. His eyes glistened. His hand moved as if he might hug her. But then his phone vibrated again with Chloe's name flashing across the screen. That was the future calling. He pulled his sleeve free, gently but firmly. "I'm sorry, Lil," he said, not meeting her eyes. "You're strong, you'll be okay with Mom." Megan felt something inside her chest tear as she watched him walk past their daughter, past the table, past the printed letter with the government seal, like all of it was just background noise. The front door opened. Sunlight flooded in again. Ryan stepped out, dragging his suitcases behind him, never once turning back. The door clicked shut, leaving a silence so loud it felt like it'd sound. Later that day, Megan sat in the hospital ward beside Lily's bed. Machines beeped softly around them. The room smelled of antiseptic and lemon-scented cleaner. Lily dozed, her small fingers wrapped around Megan's thumb even in sleep, as if afraid it might vanish if she let go. Megan tried to hold herself together long enough not to cry in front of her daughter. She opened her bag to look for a tissue and saw the folded letter again, the one Ryan had refused to read. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. This time she read every word slowly, line by line. The more she read, the more her mind struggled to believe it. The agency was not just congratulating her for making the shortlist, they were awarding her from the entire project. Roads, bridges, interchanges, 3 regions, multi-year commitment. The numbers on the page were so large her brain almost refused to understand. The total value, $50 billion, not 5 million, $50 billion. Her heart pounded against her ribs. $50 billion meant jobs, expansion, teams, offices, and influence she had only seen in magazines. It also meant something else: Lily's treatments paid in full. Second opinions from the best specialists in the world. A future where medical bills would no longer decide what kind of care her daughter could receive. Tears blurred her vision as she reached the final line. "We look forward to working closely with Hayes Engineering Solutions as our primary contractor on this historic project." Megan pressed the letter to her chest and let herself cry silently, shoulders shaking, trying not to wake Lily. She thought of the morning, of Ryan's cold eyes, of his suitcase wheels scraping across their floor. She remembered the way he had waved away this exact paper without even looking at it. At that very same moment, across town, Ryan sat in a luxury restaurant with Chloe and her father. Crystal glasses clinked. Soft music played. Chloe's manicured hand rested lightly on his arm as her father slid a folder across the table. "In here," Mr. Ward said, "is your new contract with Ward Group. It's not final until we sign, of course. But once everything is clean, you'll be coming on board." Ryan smiled, trying to seem relaxed, but his hands were sweaty. "I appreciate the opportunity," he said. "Everything is taken care of." "Good," Mr. Ward replied, opening another folder. "Now, before we finalize anything, I want to brief you on a major government project we just lost. We were the clear favorite, but the agency surprised everyone and chose a smaller firm instead. It's the largest infrastructure contract in the country's history. $50 billion. We need people who understand these players." Ryan leaned forward, curious despite himself. $50 billion, he had never even imagined numbers like that connected to one company. "Which firm got it?" he asked. Mr. Ward slid a printed summary across the table. Ryan reached for it, his fingers closing around the paper. His eyes dropped to the bold black letters of the winning company's name. Hayes Engineering Solutions, lead engineer, Megan Hayes. His breath caught in his throat. Chloe kept talking, but the words around him turned into a blur. The name on the page glowed like it had been burned into the paper. Megan, the wife he had just divorced. The woman he had left in a small hospital room with their sick child. The same letter he had refused to read that morning. His grip on the paper tightened. For the first time that day, Ryan Hayes realized he might have made the biggest mistake of his life. And this was only the beginning. Ryan stared at the paper in his hands like it was written in another language. His own last name jumped off the page over and over again. Hayes Engineering Solutions. Lead engineer Megan Hayes, $50 billion. The air in the restaurant suddenly felt too thick. His collar felt too tight. He could hear his own heartbeat in his ears, louder than the soft music and clinking plates around them. Chloe was still talking, her voice smooth as always. "We were sure we had it," she said to her father. "All the right connections, the history, the scale, and then this little firm comes out of nowhere." She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "Some people in the industry are already calling it a miracle." "A very expensive miracle," Mr. Ward said dryly. "We lost more than money today, we lost influence, we look weak." He nodded toward the paper in Ryan's hand. "Do you know them?" Ryan's mouth opened, but no words came out. His brain rushed to build a story fast enough to stay safe. If he said yes, they would ask why he had not warned them. If he said no, he would be lying about something they could easily check. His fingers tightened around the edges of the sheet until they bent. I've heard the name, he said finally, his voice thin. Small firm, my wife, my ex-wife, she runs something in that space. Chloe's eyes sharpened. She had always listened very carefully when he talked, not just to what he said but to what he did not say. Your ex-wife? She repeated softly. What's her name again? Megan, he said, almost choking on the word. Megan Hayes. Silence fell over the table like a heavy curtain. Chloe leaned back in her chair, her face suddenly blank. Mr. Ward's eyes, which had been mildly annoyed before, turned cold, very cold. He reached for the page, tugged it from Ryan's grip, and read the name again. Hayes Engineering Solutions, he read slowly. Lead engineer Megan Hayes. He let out a long breath through his nose. Tell me, Ryan, is there something you forgot to mention? Ryan felt sweat slide down his back. I didn't know, he said quickly. I swear I didn't know it was this big. She said she was working on something important, but she always says that. We separated before any award. Chloe's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. You never told us your wife was one of our biggest competitors, she said. Her tone was soft, but her eyes were hard. You didn't think that was relevant? She was just my wife, he blurted. She had a small company in a garage. You said yourself Ward Group had this in the bag. I thought she didn't stand a chance. He tried to laugh, but his voice shook. Nobody thought a small firm could get something like this. How was I supposed to know? Mr. Ward closed the folder slowly, like he was hiding a weapon. That's the problem, he said. You didn't know, you didn't ask, you didn't think. He folded his hands on the table. I brought you close because my daughter said you were sharp, loyal, useful. Now it looks like the man we were testing is the same man whose ex-wife just took $50 billion out of our hands. It's not like that, Ryan said, panic rising. I can talk to her, I can convince her to partner with us, we can still get a piece. Chloe's laughter cut through his words, higher and harsher than before. You convince her, she said. Ryan, you just divorced her and walked away from your sick child. Why would she listen to you? The words hit him like a slap. He had told Chloe about Lily, but always in little pieces that made him look like the tired, brave man, not the one who had given up. Hearing it said like that, in one clean sentence, made it sound uglier than he had ever let it sound in his own head. Mr. Ward stood up. He was not a tall man, but in that moment he seemed to grow. We will talk later, he said. For now, I need to speak with the board about how this happened. He paused. You may want to think very carefully about how you explain your connection to Hayes Engineering Solutions, Mr. Hayes. The press will be asking questions. He walked away without waiting for a reply. After a few seconds, Chloe also stood. She placed her napkin on the table as if they were simply done with lunch. I need to make some calls, she said. We'll talk tonight. Chloe, wait, Ryan said, getting to his feet so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. You believe me, right? I didn't know. I thought this whole thing with your dad and the position, it was real. She looked at him for a long, long moment. I believed you were useful, she said finally. I still hope I'm not wrong. Don't call me, I'll call you. Then she walked away, leaving him alone at the table with the bill, the crumpled paper, and the sinking feeling that the floor under his new life was starting to crack. In another part of the city, Megan stood in front of a tall glass building with her name on a small plaque near the entrance. The letters still didn't feel real. Hayes Engineering Solutions headquarters. The company had been operating for years, but mostly from borrowed rooms, small rented spaces, and that first garage. Today was different. Today, thanks to the new contract, they were moving into an entire floor of a modern office tower. Her team bustled around her. Some carried boxes, others argued softly about where to put the big table. A painter was still touching up a wall in the corner. Through it all, Megan held her phone pressed to her ear, listening to the project officer from the government agency go over details. Yes, we're ready to set up the joint working group, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Yes, we understand the timeline. We have already partnered with Northbridge Holdings for financial and logistical support. That had been one of her quiet tricks. Months earlier, when she realized her small company alone might look too weak for such a massive job, she had set up a holding company, Northbridge, that could show stronger backing. She kept full control, but on paper it spread the risk and made her firm look safer. Some firms tried to copy this move after seeing her success, but she had been one of the first small engineers to pull it off at that level. Ward Group had seen the name in the early documents but had not taken it seriously. They had seen small and stopped paying attention there. When the call ended, Megan lowered the phone slowly. Her assistant, Jonah, a young project manager with bright eyes and rolled-up sleeves, came over with a folder. "The hospital sent the updated cost estimates," he said. "They're ready to talk about your idea." Just hearing the word hospital made Megan's chest tighten. She took the folder with both hands. "And the trust?" she asked. "We can set it up as soon as the first payment comes in," he replied. "If you really want to cover treatment for children like Lily, we can do it. The numbers work. You'll still be more than fine." More than fine? It felt like such a strange phrase. 5 years ago, she had counted coins at the end of the month. Now someone was telling her she would be more than fine even after giving away millions. It made her feel light and heavy at the same time. "Let's do it," she said. "I want a solid program, not just a headline. Real help, real doctors, real beds." Jonah grinned. "Yes, boss." Later that week, the story broke. The headline showed up first on business blogs, then on mainstream news, then on every social media feed. Megan opened by mistake. "Single mother engineer wins record $50,000 government contract." From garage to giant, the Megan Hayes story. Little firm beats Ward Group in shocking upset. Reporters wanted interviews. Some came to her office, others called and emailed nonstop. Megan tried to keep her answers short and calm. She spoke about safe bridges, honest work, and her team. She did not talk about sleepless nights on hospital chairs or about sitting on the floor crying over bills. She definitely did not talk about her ex-husband or the day he left. But the internet loved drama. It did not take long for someone to dig up old photos of her with Ryan on her arm at company dinners, at charity walks, at award nights. Very quickly, new headlines started popping up. "Ex-husband of billion-dollar engineer works for rival firm. Did Ward Group underestimate Megan Hayes because of her gender?" At first, Megan tried not to look at any of it. She blocked certain words, turned off notifications, and buried herself in work. Designs had to be checked, teams had to be built, local contractors needed training. There was no time to sit and scroll. Yet one night, after putting Lily to bed, she made the mistake of opening a video link a friend had sent. It was a TV panel. 4 people sat at a large round table arguing excitedly. Behind them, a big screen showed her picture next to Ryan, with a bold question: "Who really lost the most?" "Well, she's the big winner, obviously," one panelist said. "She gets the money, the power, the respect." "And he loses everything," another replied. "His marriage, his child, now his career. Ward Group is in trouble and they're not going to let him walk away clean. They need someone to blame." Megan closed the laptop abruptly, her hands shaking. She didn't want to think about him. She didn't want to imagine his face right now, his pride cracked open in front of strangers. He had chosen his path. He had walked out. So why did part of her still ache for the man he used to be, the one who had clapped for her first small contract and danced with her in the kitchen when they were young and foolish? She went back to the bedroom. Lily was sleeping, her thin chest rising and falling slowly. A soft beanie still covered her head, but the doctor had said the new treatments, now paid in full and then some, were working. The numbers on the charts were moving in the right direction. There was hope now, solid and real, not the thin, shaky hope she used to hold onto like smoke. Megan sat on the edge of the bed and brushed a hand over her daughter's cheek. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. "No matter who left, no matter what they say, we're going to be okay." Across town, Ryan's world was not okay. At first, Ward Group did not fire him, they froze him. Meetings went ahead without him. Email threads that used to include his name suddenly did not. His access to the company's internal files was quietly restricted for review. His keycard stopped working in certain areas. When he asked, HR said there was an internal investigation. Nothing to worry about, just a formality. When he tried to call Chloe, she always seemed to be in a meeting or just stepping into a call. Her messages back became shorter and colder. "Busy, we'll talk later." Later came in the form of a boardroom with a long table, a stack of printed emails, and a lawyer. "Mr. Hayes," the lawyer said calmly, "do you admit that you had close personal ties to the winning firm and failed to declare this conflict of interest?" Ryan's stomach dropped. "We were separated," he protested. "I did declare it at my old company. She was just my wife. I never thought." A board member cut in. "You never thought, that is the phrase that keeps coming up, Mr. Hayes." They went through his messages to Chloe looking for proof he had leaked inside details. They highlighted every line where he mentioned Megan's work, even innocent ones. "She's chasing some big project but she never wins. She's always chasing government work. She's too stubborn to partner with big firms. Here, the lawyer said, tapping the paper, you describe her business strategy. Here, you talk about her contacts. Here, you mention she is applying for a national road program that could change everything. You never thought these details might be important. I was just talking, Ryan said weakly. I didn't think. Again, that phrase. In the end, they let him go. The official letter spoke of loss of confidence and unresolved conflict of interest. It said nothing about Chloe's messages or Mr. Ward's hints about a clean slate. It said nothing about how they had gladly listened when he told stories at dinners that made them feel smart. On paper, it was all his fault. Chloe did not come to see him off. She sent a text, we're restructuring, it's best if we both move on, please don't contact me again. He stared at his phone for a long time, waiting for another message, an explanation, something. Nothing came. From there, life started to slide down faster than he expected. Without his job, the nice apartment he had rented near the city center no longer made sense. The landlord did not care about his story. Stories did not pay rent. He moved to a smaller place in a noisier part of town, then to an even smaller room above a noisy bar. The ring he'd planned to buy for Chloe never left the jewelry store. The few expensive suits he still had began to feel like costumes. His old friends from work stopped inviting him out. At first they said they were busy, then they just didn't answer. News traveled quickly. People whispered the word traitor, even though he had never meant to betray anyone. Job interviews dried up as soon as companies realized his name was linked to the Ward Group scandal. One evening, he walked past an electronics shop with a wall of TVs. All of them showed the same live event. A banner at the bottom of the screen read, Government signs historic deal with Megan Hayes. The camera showed Megan in a simple dark dress standing behind a podium. Her hair was pulled back neatly. She looked older, stronger, not like the tired woman he remembered gripping hospital bills at the kitchen table. She was calm, clear, confident. She spoke about safer roads, jobs for local workers, fair pay. Then she did something that made his throat close up. She thanked the parents who stay strong in hospital rooms and the children who fight like warriors. The camera switched to a shot of the front row. There, in a small seat beside some officials, sat Lily. She wore a bright yellow dress and a matching headband. Her cheeks were fuller now. She was smiling. When Megan looked down at her, their eyes met and something soft passed between them, not pity, not fear, hope. Ryan pressed his hand against the glass of the shop without realizing it. People brushed past him on the sidewalk, not knowing that the little girl on the screen was the same one he had left behind. Not knowing that the woman shaking hands with ministers and shaking up an entire industry had once cried into his shirt when they were both broke and scared. He went home that night and sat in the dark for a long time. For the first time since he walked out, he let himself remember everything. Not just the fights and stress and bills, but the laughter, the early days, the way Megan used to fall asleep at her desk with pencil lines on her face. The way Lily had clung to him the last morning. He thought about calling, just once, just to say he was sorry, but what would he say if she picked up? Sorry I traded you and our daughter for a job that vanished as soon as I stopped being useful. Sorry I didn't even read the letter that could have changed everything. Instead of calling, he did something else. He went to the hospital. It was not the same small wing they had been in before. That old area was still there, but a new building was going up beside it, covered in scaffolding and fresh paint. Bright banners hung from the top floor with pictures of smiling children. A large temporary sign read, Future Home of the Hayes Pediatric Center, funded by Hayes Engineering Solutions. He stopped on the sidewalk and stared up at the name. Her name, his old name. It was everywhere now, on billboards and buses, on the front of this hospital, on the lips of reporters. In a few months, he realized people would only ever connect Hayes with her. Inside, the waiting room smelled the same as it had before. Hand sanitizer, plastic seats, stale coffee from a vending machine. Parents sat hunched over, some sleeping in awkward positions, some staring into space, some whispering into phones. He could see himself in them, the man he used to be before bitterness took over. He walked up to the receptionist. Hi, he began, his voice rough. I'm looking for a patient. Her name is Lily Hayes. The woman looked at her screen. Are you family? She asked. He hesitated. I'm her father, he said. The words felt strange in his mouth, like a title he was borrowing. She typed something, frowned, then shook her head. I'm sorry, sir. According to the file, the legal guardian is listed as Megan Hayes. It says the father's rights were surrendered as part of a divorce agreement. If you want access, we'll need written permission from Ms. Hayes. Ryan's cheeks burned. He remembered the line he had signed so carelessly, the one his lawyer had said would make the process smoother. At the time, he had been so focused on his new life with Chloe that he'd barely read it. Now it trapped him here on the wrong side of a desk. "Can't you just tell me if she's okay?" he asked softly. "Please, I don't need details, just is she still here, is she all right?" The woman looked at him for a long second. Something in his face must have moved her because she checked the screen again and lowered her voice. "She's doing much better," she said quickly. "That's all I can say. New treatments, strong response. She doesn't stay overnight as much anymore." Ryan closed his eyes for a moment. Relief and guilt washed over him in equal waves. "Thank you," he whispered. As he turned to leave, he noticed a poster on the wall near the elevator. It announced an event 2 weeks from now, groundbreaking ceremony, Hayes Pediatric Center. Special guest, Megan Hayes. Underneath, in smaller letters, a celebration of hope for children and families fighting cancer. He knew he should stay away. He had no right to be there. But something in him, something stubborn and hungry and broken, grabbed onto the idea and refused to let go. 2 weeks later, he stood outside the hospital again, this time behind a barrier with a crowd. Camera crews were setting up. Reporters checked their microphones. A red ribbon stretched across the entrance of the new building. On the temporary stage, a row of empty chairs waited for important people. Ryan kept his head down, hands shoved deep in his pockets. He had sold his last fancy watch just to cover rent. His suit was gone. He wore a plain shirt and jeans now, blending into the crowd like any other face. But inside, he felt like his heart was about to punch through his chest. Car doors slammed one after another as black vehicles pulled up. Government officials stepped out, smiling and waving. Doctors in white coats gathered near the front. Nurses guided a group of children with little flags and bright caps to sit in a special area. Then finally, a car door opened and Megan stepped out. The crowd clapped. Some people shouted her name. Cameras flashed. She walked with a straight back, cool and calm, but he could see the hint of nerves in the way her fingers curled around the folder she carried. She wore a simple cream-colored suit, nothing flashy, but on her it looked like power and peace. For a moment, Ryan forgot how to breathe. He watched as she shook hands with the minister, with the hospital director, with donors. He saw her smile for the cameras. He saw her look up at the building with an expression he knew well, half pride, half disbelief. Then a small figure stepped out from behind her. "Lily." No beanie this time? Soft new hair covered her head in a short, cute style. Her face was rounder. There was color in her cheeks. She wore a light blue dress and white sneakers, and she held a small pair of golden scissors in her hand for the ribbon. The crowd awed softly. Some people clapped just for her. Megan put a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder and leaned down to whisper something. Lily nodded, her small face serious and brave. Ryan felt the world tilt. His eyes stung. This was what he had left. This was what he had traded for empty promises and cold boardrooms. He stepped closer to the barrier, fingers curling around the metal bar. The security guard gave him a quick warning look, but he didn't move back. He couldn't. His eyes were glued to the stage. The host tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this historic day," he said. "Today we break ground on a center that will save lives for generations to come. Please welcome the engineer who made it possible, Ms. Megan Hayes." Applause rose like a wave. Megan walked to the podium. She looked out over the sea of faces. For a moment, their eyes seemed to brush past each other. And Ryan wondered if she had seen him. He wasn't sure. The distance between them was not just measured in meters now, but in years, in choices, in the weight of everything left unsaid. He leaned forward, heart pounding, as she opened her mouth to speak. He had no idea that in just a few minutes he would no longer be able to hide in the crowd. He didn't know that something small and simple, a child's clear voice, a single word, was about to pull him into the center of every camera, every eye, every memory. And when that happened, when the world finally saw them standing in the same place again, the question would no longer be who won the contract. It would be what kind of man he had chosen to be. The air outside the new hospital wing shimmered with heat and camera flashes. Reporters leaned forward against the crowd barrier, microphones raised, waiting for every word. The sky above the city was a brilliant pale blue, the kind that made everything look sharper than it really was. Megan Hayes stood at the podium, her speech in neat lines on the paper before her, but for a moment she didn't see the words. She saw the faces in the crowd, the children in bright caps, the doctors in white coats, the parents holding phones high, and somewhere behind them, a shape that felt like a memory she had not invited. She blinked once, steadying herself, and began to speak. Her voice carried through the speakers clear and calm. When we started Hayes Engineering Solutions, we had one desk, one laptop, and a dream. Today we stand here because of everyone who believed that even small beginnings can build something strong. This center will offer free treatment for every child diagnosed with blood cancer, and every parent who once had to choose between hope and money will never face that choice again. The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. Lily looked up at her mother, her small hand gripping the scissors tightly. Ryan felt the words land like stones inside his chest. He had once helped her rehearse speeches, corrected her grammar, laughed at her nerves. Now he stood outside the fence listening to her talk about hope and choice while he had none left. His throat ached. He tried to tell himself that he just wanted to see his daughter to make sure she was really okay. But deep down he knew he wanted forgiveness, the kind of forgiveness that could rewrite the past. The master of ceremonies stepped forward, announcing that it was time to cut the ribbon. Megan turned toward Lily, crouched down, and whispered something that made the girl smile. Together they lifted the scissors, the crowd counting down. 3, 2, 1. The ribbon fluttered to the ground and confetti burst into the air. Laughter, clapping, music. For a few minutes the space was pure celebration. Then a sound broke through, a man's voice, rough and desperate. Megan. Heads turned, security shifted uneasily. Ryan had stepped through the side of the crowd before anyone could stop him, pushing past the barrier with both hands raised. Please, just a second, he said quickly. I'm not here to cause trouble. The guards hesitated, unsure whether to remove him or wait for instructions. He looked smaller than in any photograph, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes hollow. Megan froze where she stood. The years between them seemed to fold up like a paper map. For a heartbeat, she was back in that kitchen, watching him carry suitcases to the door. Then she saw Lily watching her, confused and curious. The moment stretched. The cameras, always hungry, swung toward the commotion. Ryan's voice cracked. I just wanted to see my daughter. He looked at Lily and the crowd seemed to melt away for him. You're beautiful, sweetheart, you look so strong. Lily hesitated, glancing from her father to her mother. Mommy, she whispered, tugging at Megan's sleeve. That's Daddy, isn't it? Her voice carried just enough for the microphones to catch it. Reporters leaned forward, sensing a story. Megan swallowed hard. The part of her that was still human, still wounded, wanted to cry. But another part, the one that had survived sleepless nights, boardrooms, rejection letters, and chemo results, took over. She looked down at her daughter, then back at Ryan. Her voice was steady when she answered. No, sweetheart, she said softly but clearly enough for everyone to hear. That's the man who taught us what love should never look like. The silence that followed was enormous. Even the cameras seemed to pause. Ryan's face went pale. He took one unsteady step forward, then stopped as two security guards moved between them. Megan, please, he said hoarsely. I'm not asking for money or anything, I just need to explain. There's nothing to explain, she said quietly. You made your choice. I didn't know, Megan, he said, his voice breaking. I didn't know about the contract, about anything. I was stupid. I was scared. He gestured helplessly toward Lily. I left because I thought I couldn't handle losing her, and I thought I could build something safe somewhere else, but nothing was safe without you too. Tears pricked the corners of her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. You left because you thought comfort mattered more than love, she said. You can't undo that now. She turned to the crowd, trying to pull the focus away. Let's continue the tour, please. The officials tried to guide her toward the entrance, but reporters were already shouting questions. Ms. Hayes, is this man your ex-husband? How do you respond to rumors that Ward Group fired him because of your deal? Will he be part of the hospital program? Ryan lowered his head. The cameras caught every angle. The trembling man who had once worn tailored suits now standing in cheap shoes on the edge of his ex-wife's triumph. Security gently moved him back toward the barrier, but before he left he turned one last time. I know I don't deserve it, he said softly, almost to himself, but tell her I'm proud, please. Megan didn't answer. She turned away, guiding Lily toward the entrance, but as they stepped inside, something in her chest shifted. Pride and pain wrestled for space. She had dreamed of this victory for years, but she had never imagined it would feel like this, hollow at the edges, like applause echoing in an empty hall. Inside the new wing, the smell of fresh paint mingled with disinfectant. Nurses showed her the new equipment, officials posed for photos beside the sign bearing her company's logo. Lily clutched her mother's hand, whispering, "Mommy, he looked sad." Megan squeezed her daughter's fingers gently. "Sometimes people realize too late what matters," she said, "but we can still wish them peace." Later, when the cameras were gone and the guests had left, Megan stepped out onto the balcony overlooking the city. The sun was setting, staining the sky orange and gold. Down below, workers were clearing the last of the confetti from the pavement. For a brief moment, she saw a lone figure sitting on a bench across the street, head bowed, elbows on his knees, a familiar shape outlined by the fading light. She knew it was him. She could have walked away. Instead, she stood there for a long minute, watching the man who had once promised her the world and left her with bills and heartbreak. She thought about calling security again, about telling someone to make sure he left the property, but something inside her whispered, "Enough. The punishment has already found him." She turned back toward the hospital wing, where through the glass she could see Lily laughing with a nurse, her small hands busy arranging colored pencils on a new desk. That was where the future was, that was where healing lived. The next morning, the incident was everywhere. News sites replayed the footage, slowing it down, magnifying faces. The comment sections exploded. Some people called Megan cold, others called her powerful. Some called Ryan pitiful, others called him human. Hashtags trended. Her assistant begged her to issue a statement. Instead, she posted one short message. "May this hospital remind us that second chances belong to those who never stop fighting for good." She didn't mention Ryan by name, didn't feed the noise. The focus shifted back to the children, the programs, the miracle recoveries already happening. Weeks passed, the hospital wing opened fully, treatments began, donations poured in. Megan's company expanded across 3 countries, employing thousands. Her face appeared on magazine covers and documentaries. But in quiet moments when she walked through the pediatric ward and saw parents sleeping beside their children, she thought about the thin line between success and loss. She thought about how easy it had been for love to turn into resentment, for fear to turn into cruelty. One evening, after visiting a new patient, she stopped by Lily's room. The little girl was drawing on the whiteboard, stick figures holding hands under a bright sun. "That's you," Lily said, pointing to the taller figure, "and that's me." Then she added another smaller figure standing a little apart. "Who's that?" Megan asked. Lily shrugged. "He keeps showing up in my dreams. I think it's Daddy." Megan's throat tightened. She sat beside her daughter and watched her color in the picture. "If you ever see him in your dreams," she said softly, "tell him we're doing okay. Tell him we wish him light." Some miles away, Ryan had found work with a small local contractor repairing rural roads. The pay was modest, the hours long, but it was honest labor. At night, he slept in a small rented room above a shop. Every morning he carried a thermos of coffee and a faded photo of Lily in his wallet. Sometimes, during lunch breaks, he saw Megan's interviews on the small TV in the roadside diner. He never changed the channel. One day, months later, he walked past a construction site and noticed the logo on a truck, Hayes Engineering Solutions. The workers there recognized him faintly from the news but said nothing. One young engineer offered him a bottle of water and a smile. "Ms. Hayes says every road deserves to be fixed right," the man said, "even the small ones." Ryan nodded slowly, looking at the logo again. "She's right," he murmured, "especially the small ones." That night he sat under a streetlight, pulled out a worn notebook and began to write a letter he would never send. He wrote about mistakes and pride, about how easy it was to forget kindness when chasing comfort. He wrote about the morning he left and the letter on the table he never read. When he finished, he folded the paper carefully and tucked it between the pages of his old wallet. At the same time, in her office overlooking the city, Megan closed her laptop after approving another hospital grant. The skyline glittered outside. She leaned back, breathing deeply. For the first time in years, the silence around her didn't feel lonely, it felt peaceful. Her phone buzzed with a new message, a photo from Lily's doctor. It showed the girl standing with other children, healthy and smiling, holding a sign that said, "Hope builds everything." Megan smiled through tears. She whispered into the quiet room as if someone might still hear her across the distance. "We're all still building, Ryan. Some of us just learned how to build better." Down in the city streets, traffic moved on. People crossed lights, horns blared, life kept its rhythm. Somewhere, a construction crew poured concrete for a new road, one that would lead directly to the hospital gates. The man smoothing the wet cement looked up for a second at the glowing hospital sign in the distance and whispered a small prayer of thanks. for forgiveness he hadn't earned, for lessons learned too late, for the tiny miracle of still being allowed to start again. And up in the hospital window, a little girl waved at the skyline, not knowing that the man below looked up at that same light and smiled. Subscribe to this channel to support our growth and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Let this story remind you, walking away from love can cost more than money, it can cost the life you were meant to build together.